Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm your boy, 12 Kyle. Check this out. We got a special one for you today. You see the title. I had the idea of wanting to talk to not only someone that I respect as a fellow podcaster and a homeboy, but somebody who is a huge fan of hip hop as well, huge sports fan as well. Um, and what I wanted to do was because everybody kind of, if you listen to this podcast, if you follow me, you kind of know my thoughts on two MCs, Tupac and Biggie. In this particular episode, we're going to talk about Biggie, but more specifically, what we're going to talk about is the perspective from a fan of what they think would have happened if Biggie were still alive. Now, the cool part about this is that, at least for me, I get to sit back and just listen to the perspective of someone who really, really enjoyed Biggie and his music. Ladies and gentlemen, my man, fellow podcaster, husband, father, businessman, Manny Brown is in the building. Manny, what up, baby?
What's going on, my bro? What's going on, man? It's an
Man,
honor. I
everything
say that a
good,
lot,
man.
but it's legit an honor, man. You are one of my mentors in the podcast game, so it's always an honor to be on the same microphone with you, man.
Man, always, man. Appreciate it, man.
Yes,
This
sir.
dude been knowing him for a while, knows his stuff. Again, a huge hip hop head, a huge, and when I mean huge sports fan. Um, born and raised in Brooklyn, right? Is that
Born
correct?
and raised in Brooklyn, man.
Born and raised in
Spent
Brooklyn.
some years in life in Florida as well, but my basically from birth to age 17 is it's been New York City, man. It's been
Yeah, the
Brooklyn.
only bad thing I can say about him is he's a Mets fan.
Hey, we won't see. We exchange the pleasantries. We being nice to each
I'm a
other.
Yankees fan. Come on, man.
No need. You know what? We could have just kept that down low. You know what I mean? We didn't even have to expose
Hey,
all
but
that.
y'all are doing well this year, man. I'm happy
Y'all
for
are
you.
doing
Maybe,
as well.
maybe,
I hate to
maybe.
see it. The one year the Mets are actually doing really, really great. Of
Right.
course, the Yankees are better right now, anyway,
Hey,
record wise.
man. Who knows? Maybe, just maybe, November we might see each other.
Oh man,
That would
listen.
be a blessing.
Listen, hey, we might have to just do a special 12
I
Kyle
know, right?
Subway series edition. Like this
Right.
that's how that's the levels to this.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, like I said, Brooklyn native man, so I got you on here to talk about Biggie. So what I did was I specifically said I wanted to get just, and we can do them one by one,
Okay.
10 things from you that you thought would have happened had Biggie still lived. Obviously, we know Biggie was tragically taken away from us March 9th, 1997,
Yep.
um, senselessly, and we still don't know who murdered Biggie.
Yeah, it's just
Um,
crazy.
well, I know it's crazy, and I've done a few podcasts on my perspective of Biggie, and obviously we reviewed his albums, and you and I were just talking about his albums right before, and we really, even as being such big fans as we are, we still feel kind of robbed because we still didn't get to get Biggie in his prime. I mean, if Biggie had lived, he'd be 50 years old now. So let's start there, man. Before we even get to that, let me ask you a quick question.
Yeah.
What was your introduction to Biggie? What was? Do you remember like your first
Yeah.
time hearing him? First song, your first
So
memory of Biggie.
yeah, my first memory of Biggie, just my introduction to Biggie as a whole. So I'm 35 now. So when Ready to Die came out, it was obviously 1994. I was 8 years old, and I was just starting to get into hip hop. Like you still as you're 8 years old, so you kind of like listen to the songs, but you don't really
Right.
like start understanding the context of the song. You don't know what One More Chance necessarily means or whatever. So a warning or anything like that. You just like the songs. You just like So I'm starting to get into hip hop. And my older brother, huge hip hop head,
Okay.
person that got me into hip hop, or one of the people that got me into hip hop. And as soon as Ready to Die comes out, it's just when I tell people like when Ready to Die comes out and just like along with Illmatic and Enter the 36 Chambers,
Mm-hmm.
3 albums that literally ushered in the East Coast style of hip hop. But when Ready to Die comes out, I mean, that's just the only thing you heard. Like it was just that's it. Like whatever album you was listening to
Right.
before, just it was done. Like it was there was nothing else to really compete with it. So when Ready to Die comes out, and I'm young, so I didn't really understand the gravity or the magnitude of that.
Mhm.
So to answer your question, when I first got introduced to Biggie was right around 1990, end of 95, 96. At this point, I'm going into being, yeah, I think I had just turned 9.
Mhm.
I'm in fourth grade, I
Fourth, yeah,
believe,
yeah.
third or fourth grade. I can't remember,
Sounds
but
about right.
and I met one of my homies that was like a huge. He's the other person that put me onto hip hop, and he was a huge Biggie fan. And he's sitting how like he literally like chapter and verse can recite every single line, every single verse from Ready to Die. And so obviously, me and him clicked up. Oh, yeah, da, da, da. And and then he plays me Who Shot Ya because I hadn't heard Who Shot Ya,
Oh,
and I
wow.
don't believe back then. I think back then Who Shot Ya wasn't on the album version of Ready to Die. It was added
Mhm.
later on as like a
Yeah,
bonus
it
track
was,
or
it
whatever.
was.
But back then it wasn't. And back then,
Right.
back in the day, for the youngest when we had tapes, Who Shot Ya
Shout out to
was
cassette
not
tapes.
on the album. Obviously, it was released later on.
Mhm.
So I heard Who Shot Ya, and I was like, man, I was just floored. Like his flow, his delivery, his voice. Like that's the thing that more than anything else caught me on the Biggie is just his voice. Like I don't know what it is about voices in hip hop, but just the
Mhm.
ability to. That's what I love about Jadakiss. It's just that voice. It's just it's iconic. So the voice and I mean at the flow, everything, bars, everything, right? And then so I'm just hooked. I was already a fan to begin with, but I was hooked already. Like there was no going back after that. And then yeah, man, and then it was just and then so then I was going back and listening to Party and Bullshit, listening to
Yeah.
some of the mixtapes and everything like that. So I spent basically 96 catching up to everything I had missed, 93 and 94 or whatever.
Mhm.
And then of course by the time the lead up to ready to Life After Death, I'm like I'm just ecstatic. Like I can't even contain myself. Like I'm just like and again for the kids out there, like this was back in the day. There was no like SoundCloud. It wasn't
Facts.
Spotify. It wasn't like so like
Facts.
you literally had to wait for these albums to drop, and then you had to go to the record store, either get the tape or get a
Facts.
CD or whatever, or get both sometimes in some instances. So yeah, man. So when Life After Death or when Ready to Die came out, or Life After Death, I'm sorry, came out or was about to come out, and it was just the lead up to that was just like it was like waiting for like a Marvel movie now to come out. Like you're just like you're literally watching different trailers and trying to like. So then of course Hypnotize comes out. And
Mm.
then that takes it to another level. Hypnotize
Whew.
shuts down the game to another level. And I remember when we first, my brother and I first watched the Hypnotize video. It came on Rhapsody. It wasn't Rhapsody the Basement at the point. It was just Rhapsody. I think Joe
Rhapsody,
Clare was
yep.
hosting it still.
Yep, yep, yep.
And we, I he picked me up from school. We came home. I don't even remember what the segment was, but they were airing Hypnotized for the first time on Rhapsody, and then we just watched it, and it was just like watching a fucking movie on a like you just it just floors you like the production and it's like yo these motherfuckers really made a movie and hip hop video like I mean it's just everything, man. I mean so that was my real introduction to Biggie, man. I kind of missed the Ready to Die phase. I missed that. Obviously, I went back and caught up with it, obviously, but I
Right.
missed Ready to Die. So my real introduction was Who Shot Ya, and then everything that came in between, and then of course Junior Mafia, and then
Mhm.
all the features that he was on throughout 95, 96 with all the bad, with Total and Little Kim. So yeah, it was kind of like a slow burn, I would describe it for me as a Biggie fan.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. I mean, that what you described really is very typical of what, fans went through in that time frame, and I'm glad you
Mm.
said that because, even the part about going to the record store, like, that was an investment.
Yeah.
We had to leave our house to go, purchase music. Wasn't you couldn't just whip out something and just start listening to it. Um, my introduction, man, was crazy. I remember I was playing football at South Carolina State University,
Mm.
and uh, same thing. One of my teammates, he had a cassette single, and I needed some. We were warming up, getting ready for this game. We were getting ready to play against Newberry College, and Newberry's not in our conference, but they're a white school. That's Newberry's probably maybe about an hour away from where we went to school, and so
Mhm.
it was a non-conference game, but it's a game against a team within our state. So we were getting up for it or whatever like that, and I needed some music, and I asked my boy Bruce. Shout out to Bruce. I said, yo, man, I said, you got some tapes? Because I had tapes, but like the tapes that I wanted that I had, I'd already listened to them on the bus and everything. I needed something to get me hyped. And so he
Mhm.
hands me this cassette single, and it's called Dolly My Baby by Supercat. Now I don't know who Supercat is. I don't know what a Dolly My Baby is, but I put it in and I play it, and I'm listening and I'm listening. Super Cat comes on his little reggae or whatever. I'm not really a huge fan of reggae, so I'm like, all right, what is this I'm listening to? And then this guy at the end of the song starts rapping, and he starts off with, "I love it when you call me Big Papa," and I'm like, I stop. I literally like we're warming up for the game. Like I literally stop in my tracks and I'm listening to him because I got my headphones on. We don't have our helmets on and stuff, and I listened to it, man. And I was like, yo, this dude is nice.
Yeah.
And I'm like wanting to hear more at the end of the verse, but I don't hear anymore. It's just that verse. So I was like, all right, let me rewind it. So I hit the rewind button. I played it again. And I played it again. And I played it again. And I played it again. To the point where when the game was over, we won the game. So we're on the bus going back. Um, my boy Bruce is like, yo, you got my tape? I was like, oh man, I think it's in my bag. It was in my Walkman. And so like the next day, he's like, "Yo, you got my tape?" I was like, "Man, I think it's in the dorm. I'll bring it to practice." And I never gave
Never
him
gave
his
that man
tape
his
back.
tape. Man.
Never gave him his tape back. I was hooked. After that, man, I started trying to find, and we had limited means because
Yeah, you have to go out and actually do like research. Like you have to
yes,
like put some work in. Again, for the youngest out here listening, like this is the again 20 years before Spotify
yes,
and Apple Music
yes.
and hell, we didn't have internet back then. Like
No, no,
it was
nothing.
like the early days of internet. So
Yes,
like unless you
yes.
had money, like and you was paying to get internet in the home, like you wasn't,
No, we
this
didn't. We
wasn't
didn't even
easily
have the
accessible.
internet. It wasn't. The
Right,
internet was a pipe dream at that
right,
point. It
exactly.
was something that was just starting to bubble. But
Right.
being able to get music, no, like I said, you had to go to a record store, and then I started hearing more and more, and then obviously, Clue tapes,
Yep.
Ron G, Kid
Yep.
Capri, he started popping up on these tapes and stuff like
Mr.
that, and then
C.
yeah, I became a fan. Um, so yeah, I just wanted to before we get started, I wanted to kind of give people a breakdown as to how we got
For
onto this
sure.
guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, so yeah, and as I see your little ladies back there.
Trying to push usher them upstairs. Give me 1 second, real quick.
Go ahead, man. Hello. Good night, man. I go through the same thing. Everybody wants to talk when it's time to go to bed or it's time to record. For those of you who can't see, Manny's kids are in the background. He's got two daughters and a son, and they're in the background just kind of jumping around. It's bedtime, but they're trying to hang out with dad. I promise I won't. I'm not gonna keep dad long. He's trying to negotiate. Oh man, fatherhood, man.
Fatherhood, man. Jesus. I don't know what it is with kids, man. Like I swear, ladies and gentlemen, I was down here in my den and I was chilling, quiet as can
Hey,
be. As soon as they hear me turn on this mic and start working, it's like they
always,
want everything, right?
always, man. Hey, mine are older than yours, and they'll come in here. I, I'm like, hey, I'm recording at 8. They'll like, oh, hey,
Yeah.
dad, did you see the
Yep.
game tonight? I'm like, hey, man, I just told you I'm recording. The way you, but yeah, man. So let's get it started, man. You got 10 things that you think would have happened had Big
Yeah.
still been alive in 2022. So let's start with number one, man. What you got?
Number one, I think probably the most obvious is Bad Boy continues his reign on top, right? I think
Mm.
Bad Boy at that time, and that's it, and again coincide with Biggie. Like Bad Boy was the biggest hip hop label at that time. I mean, it was like It had, very few could imagine like a label surpassing like Def Jam as far as importance
Right.
and relevance. And for like a 3 4 year period, Bad Boy was literally the epicenter of hip hop. It was literally like the only label to care about in hip hop, besides some artists here, artists there, whatever. And yeah, Bad Boy would have continued his reign on top. I mean, obviously, we're thinking Biggie never dies, March 9th never occurs,
Hmm.
and Life After Death comes out, number one album in the world,
Yes.
multi-platinum, Hypnotized, More Money, More Problems, Sky's the Limit. Obviously, there's gonna be a tour. You
Yes.
know, maybe obviously this was the days before deluxe editions, but who knows? Maybe even at a deluxe edition. I mean, the sky's the limit to borrow from Biggie, right? Like it
Hmm.
would have just, it would have been. And then it was at the time where Bad Boy was just investing on a heavy roster. Like I think that's the thing that Bad Boy kind of gets. I think people don't give credit to Puffy in this regard. Like, yo, he had a roster of just spitters and great MCs. I mean, you just talk about, I mean, just the locks alone,
Hmm.
but then to have Black Rob,
Like,
God
wow.
rest his
Rest in
soul,
peace. Yeah.
R.I.P. Black Rob. We lost him way too early. But Black Rob, obviously the locks. I mean, you got Biggie, you got Mace. I mean, yo, like in any era, those names alone are spearheading
Hmm.
a label, and they're at the they're in the background. You know what I'm saying? So it's just crazy to me that Bad Boy, the roster that Bad Boy had at that time, and it would have just kept going for a little while. It would have definitely kept going for a little while for sure. I don't know how long. I'll get to my list in a second. The second one on my list, but
Well,
Bad
let
Boy
me.
definitely had.
I can actually address what you said on the first one. I agree. I think they said that we're not going to stop.
Yeah.
If it's safe to say that I'm not going to say that Big's death was the reason why Bad Boy fell off, if you will. But I mean, he's the biggest artist on their label. So
Yeah.
obviously, if you take him off, that label, especially the way in which it happened, it wasn't like it was a contract dispute and he went over here to death row or he
Mhm.
went to so death or something like that. But like you said, that roster, man, I mean, and everybody, collaborated on different albums and stuff like that. And I mean, even the ladies. You got Total, you got Faith.
Yeah.
I mean, 112.
112. Yeah.
Come on,
It's
man.
just crazy. It's just crazy, man.
No, no,
It's
I'm
insane.
with you. I'm with you.
It's insane. And when people like and yeah, Biggie's death wasn't the reason Bad Boy fell off. I mean, we could do a whole episode just on Bad Boy alone and why they fell off. But I
Facts.
think that was definitely the first like domino to fall.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for lack of a better term, but that was the first domino to fall, man. When you lose someone as impactful, as influential, as a superstar, that type of guy, and you really don't have anybody to really step in and replace him. I mean, it was a domino,
Yeah.
So of course you have Biggie, and then they kept it afloat for more than kept it afloat. They kept
Mm-hmm.
going for a while, but then of course Mace retires, and
Yes.
Shine ends up in jail, and
Oh, I forgot about Shine.
all these
Damn.
things that yeah, Shine. We didn't even get Shine his flower like Shine, but all these things that just kind of happened, but it really started. You could really kind of mark the point of demarcation, really, when Biggie died. Like it was a matter. It was only a matter of time.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree 1,000%. What you got for number two?
Number two, same and kind of piggybacking off the whole Bad Boy situation.
Mm-hmm.
I think he eventually leaves Bad Boy. I think he eventually. I know that's
Ooh,
always
yeah.
been like a hip hop myth, right? Like Biggie was about to leave Bad Boy. That's why he got shot. I'm not here to listen. This podcast is not about urban legends
Right, right, right.
or boogeyman. Listen, we don't know, obviously, but we're just trying to project. I think
Mm-hmm.
eventually, I think he would have left Bad Boy. I think obviously he would have gotten too big for that label. I think it just eventually, it's natural. I mean, you look at every great hip hop. Eventually they migrate to greener pastures. I mean, Jay didn't stay with Rockefeller. They didn't even stay with Def Jam at some point. Eventually he migrated somewhere else. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
eventually it happens, right? It's just change. It's inevitable, right? I think, and I don't even think it would have been like a beef per se or something negative. I just think that Biggie would have left to maybe start his own stuff. You know what I mean? I think he would have, and I think you could, and I'm going to allude to this later on my list, but I think Biggie was definitely into like liaisoning different artists and finding
Mhm.
new talent and being that guy. And he was already kind of taking uh, um, a major presence in that regard already on Bad Boy.
Yep.
So it's easy to think that eventually he would have left to like start his own out imprint, maybe under Bad Boy, maybe under like Arista Bad Boy. But I think eventually Biggie would have just kind of evolved away from Bad Boy.
That's a great point because I mean, look no further than Junior Mafia.
Yeah,
Junior
absolutely.
Mafia's success of that first album, and then subsequently, Lil Kim branching off and
Little
C's
Kim.
branching
Yep.
off. Because those were the ones that was hungry out of that group. And
Yep.
Biggie, I definitely could have seen Biggie taking them and doing his own thing under his own label.
A lot of people
Um,
don't notice he discovered Cameron. Like he was one of the first people to really like notice Cameron. So
mhm.
who knows? Maybe Biggie. Yeah, I think it was a rumor that like Biggie wanted to sign Cameron. So who
He
knows? Like maybe
probably
he
he
does sign
probably
Cameron. You
did.
know what I
I
mean?
mean,
Yeah.
because Cameron came up with Mace,
Right.
and with Mace being on Bad Boy, who knows? And the thing is that at this time, so we're talking about 96, 97. Let's say Big, you know, finishes obligations for his contract to Bad Boy. I could definitely see him, having his own label or imprint, either under that label or on his own. So no, I
Yeah, for
agree with you
sure.
1,000% on that one.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. For sure. Number three for me, no shiny suit era. I don't think listen. I listen, crazier things have happened, but I just cannot imagine Christopher Wallace in a shiny suit for so many reasons.
Hmm.
But I just don't think you see the shiny suit era. I think the shiny suit era was kind of Puffy, the worst of Puffy. I don't want to say the worst of Puffy because I'm not gonna lie, even I enjoyed the shiny suit era for what it was at that
Right.
time. But I think that was kind of the worst excesses of Puffy, and I don't think Biggie would have just. I don't think Biggie would have been down with that. I think Biggie was still one of those guys that had his one ear to the street, one ear into like pop culture, and I think he would have. I think he would have been like, no, hey, we're not doing the shiny suit, because remember
Hmm.
Biggie's still alive, so
Right.
the More Money, More Problems video is probably different. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So who knows, right? But I don't think we get a shot. We might get a shiny suit video, but we don't get shiny suit era. Let's just put it
Facts.
that way.
Right. No, I think you're onto something there because I could definitely see that in a video because the shiny suit era, all of that stuff really took off, and Puff made everything
Yep.
like things were this way, and then Puff made it bigger. And that I think that's what those videos kind of represented, and
Mhm.
then subsequently that's what he represented on stage. And
Yep.
I hate to say it like this, Manny, but that was kind of, and you'll get where I'm coming from when I say this, it was kind of Puff riding the wave of Big's demise.
Yeah,
Not
absolutely.
necessarily to be profitable, but even something as simple, well, I can't call it simple, but even something as simple slash complex as um the Police song that was
Yeah.
uh every breath I take,
Yep.
that he sampled from Sting and the Police, which Sting is still getting paid off of. Um, you know,
Yeah.
that right there, I'll Be Missing You was the name of the song, obviously with Faith and 112 singing on the hook. But I mean, like that was a part of that was a part of the wave of music that came after Big died.
Mhm.
And it wasn't music from Big. So like, I guess the way I can put it into equation for like now, imagine when Nipsey Hussle unfortunately was murdered, and then like somebody from his label, or Black Sam or his brother started singing or started rapping, and he
Yeah.
was able to kind of ride the wave of everybody mourning Nipsey Hussle, and everybody, and then now all of a sudden everybody's buying Marathon clothes and Crenshaw shirts and stuff like
Right.
that. So it's kind of like that if I could kind of bring it fast forward to today. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
agree with
absolutely
you a
right.
thousand percent.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, it's like literally like if YG literally just started making money off of the
Perfect.
image of
YG's
and
perfect.
likeness and the
Right.
and the death monetizing it. And I don't necessarily think Puffy did it at least in the beginning. I don't think it was. I think he was sincere. Like they
Mhm.
were friends. They had a relationship. Like there was a connection there. So I don't think at least in the beginning it wasn't. I don't think it was meant to be like to profit or monetize that that death, I mean, you could just tell from "I'll Be Missing You," like there was a lot of pain,
Right.
a lot of hurt there.
Right.
Probably 2-3 years later when them checks was coming through, it was like, oh well, shit, you know what I mean? And of
And
course,
even then, Manny, I don't think it was. I can't. Obviously, we can't speak for Puff's
right,
heart or his intentions, but I don't think it was malicious. Did he make
I agree,
money? Of course he did. I don't
I
think it
agree,
was. I don't think it was done maliciously. I think we've seen a lot of stuff happen in the music industry that is done maliciously, to profit off of people's backs. But I don't think that was the case
I agree
as
with
far
you.
as Big.
I agree with you. I listen. There's a lot of things you can bag on Puffy about, but that I've always kind
Facts.
of felt like was a little bit unfair. I don't think that was. I don't think it was done maliciously.
No,
I
no
agree with
doubt,
you on
no
that one.
doubt. And to be honest, man, being older than you at that time, I remember people really, really dumping on Puff about that. Like, and it was
Hmm.
just, and a lot of it wasn't fair. And then Puff really wasn't in a position where he could kind of come back and defend himself. Because
Yeah,
if you ignore it, you know, then you just keep moving. But if you say something and people are, oh, well, why are you getting defensive? Are you
yeah,
really trying
absolutely.
to steal from Big? That type of thing.
Yeah, for real, for real. So number four for me, and this one's the one I kind of struggle with the most, but I'm
Okay.
gonna I'm gonna go with it. It's a two-parter for me.
Okay.
I think Junior Mafia doesn't fall out.
Mm.
And the other one, which is the one I really struggle with, is I don't think Little Kim loses her way. And I'll start with the second one first, because I know this one's might be a tricky one in some respects. So I don't listen. I don't profess myself to know Little Kim. Obviously, I don't know her. I don't know where her mindset is. I don't know where her upbringing was. I don't know what psychological issues she may or may not have. I don't know. But all I know is that someone that goes through the efforts to change their own appearance and the way they look, something has to be. And I don't mean it in like a negative way. I mean like there's something that it's clearly something is affecting her and something is bothering her, that she does not love herself. She does not or at least doesn't think highly of herself to enough to love herself more, which is sad because she was a really beautiful, beautiful woman. Like there was a point where literally Little Kim was the apple to everybody. You know what I mean? Like everybody just desired Little Kim in some way or shape or form. So I mean, listen, just look at that hardcore cover and just tell me Little Kim needed to do
Yes.
anything to her appearance. I mean,
Yes.
whatever. But yeah, man, it's tough to even. It's I like many. It's tough to even look at Little Kim right now. I mean,
Mm.
it's like why? Like what is going on that, and you just wish that somebody was there to just be like, yo, you don't even got to do all this. And I'm not saying that this doesn't happen if Biggie's around or whatever, because who
Mhm.
knows, right? Mental health, self hate, self love is a big thing that goes beyond a rapper being here and not being here.
Right.
But I'd like to believe that if Biggie was around, and everybody knows the relationship that they had and the love that they have both for each other, I'd like to think that if Biggie was around, maybe we don't see that. And so I'm gonna go with that one. And then the Junior Mafia clique, man. I mean, I think Biggie not being there was a huge loss for that group, man. I mean, he was the guy that brought them all out of the mud. So when he was that dude. He was like Superman for them. So when he left, you know, just that guiding light, that voice. Because I don't think none of them dudes really wanted to rap. I just think it was just
Mhm.
Biggie. I mean, they rapped in the neighborhood and they had
Right.
talent, whatever. And Biggie was like, "Yo, I could put you on," and he did. And credit to him for doing that because he saved a lot of men and women from the block. But you could just tell that once Biggie was gone, that front man was gone. That guy, that guiding light was gone, and it was nothing. There was there was no rekindling that. I mean, Little C's had a
Mhm.
little run, but without Biggie, it was just like, what is this? You know what I mean?
It's interesting that you mentioned the part about Lil Kim because me and my homeboys literally had this conversation 2 days ago in our group text.
Yeah.
Um, I think, and because what happened, I don't even know how we got on the subject of Lil Kim,
Was
and
it
I
the
sent.
BET Awards?
Well, I didn't watch the BET Awards, but I obviously saw a clip
Saw
of
the
it.
clips or whatever. Yeah.
And yeah, and that's what it was. You're right. Somebody
Hmm.
somebody posted in our group chat a picture of Lil Kim at the BET Awards, and then somebody posted a picture of Lil Kim like in 1997. And what I did was I posted a picture of Lil Kim, like even before then. Like if you go back and watch that Get Money video, I think it
Yeah.
was. Um, I mean, she had this is before she even started wearing wigs. She just had a natural short haircut.
Yeah.
She was beautiful, and I
Beautiful.
posted a picture in our group chat of her.
Beautiful.
Um, and it's not to say she's not beautiful now, but she's undergone obviously some cosmetic surgery. It looks like her skin is a lot lighter than it used to be, which is interesting because if you're familiar with Biggie and you're familiar with the story with her and Lil Kim, him and Lil Kim, and you understand the dynamic of where she was in his life,
Hmm.
when Faith was around and Charlie Baltimore was around and
Right.
some of the other women. And it just seemed to me like if from the outside looking in, the women other than, and this is just what we know publicly, which is not a
Right.
lot, but it seemed like all of the women that Big dealt with, other than Lil Kim, were light skinned,
Right.
and Kim was a brown skinned woman. And maybe there was some self hate there. Who I don't know. And
Yeah.
again, and we talked about it too. That doesn't get talked about a lot, but Faith mentioned it, and um, Kim mentioned it. I think before in interviews that of abuse with Big, and Faith mentioned she said, "Well, look, we used to fight." And so, like, we're like, wait a minute, you fight? What do
Yeah.
you mean fight? But Faith is like from the hood, like
Right.
she ain't no punk,
Right.
and so even that stuff rarely gets talked about. And I
Hmm.
think at the time that Faith brought it up, obviously it was after Big passed away, so
Hmm.
it kind of looked like in poor taste to be talking about domestic abuse in the light of his death, because
Right.
he wasn't here to defend himself, and it wasn't something that was publicly talked about when he was
Right.
here.
And it was a
All that,
different time. This was
yeah,
pre,
way
way
different time.
years before Me Too. So
Yeah, way before it's as talked about now. But even in saying all that, man, yeah, Lil Kim, man, she definitely would have benefited, I think, from Big still being here. And it's not to say that she hasn't been successful. We know what she's
yeah,
done, on the mic. We knows what she's done on when it's time for her to get on jams and collab with other people. Her features have been, she put out some great features, some legendary features.
absolutely.
Um, but like you said, that hardcore album cover, I mean, it was on everybody's dorm,
Yeah,
everybody's
come on, man.
poster wall in their dorm when
That
I was in
that that
school.
that that cover speaks for itself,
So I mean,
literally and
like,
figuratively.
and she right, and so I don't know, man, but I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, I think she definitely would have been able to benefit from Big being here. Same for Junior Mafia, though, and like you said, those guys, I think he really took a liking to Kim and C's because they were about their grind and they wanted to hustle.
Right.
Um, the other guys in the clique, they could rap, but they weren't really rappers like that. They
Right.
weren't about the grind, man. But great points on Junior Mafia and Kim.
Yeah, no, the Kim one is tough because again, you don't want hey, we're not both of us are men and we're not women and we don't
Yes,
that alone is a sore subject and a touchy subject at that. But like
yes.
so I don't want to anybody that listens to this. I hope I don't offend anybody, but I just it's just I struggle. Like, man, would things be different? Like, would Biggie have enough clout and power to be like, yo, man, you ain't got to be doing this to yourself? Who knows, man?
Hmm.
And maybe this is something even beyond Biggie. Like, maybe this was inevitable. Maybe she just has some trauma from her life before fame, celebrity. Maybe there was who knows, man. It's tough, man. But yeah, man, I hope for her sake, I hope that she's happy and she can find self love somehow, some
Yes,
way.
indeed, indeed.
Yeah, for sure, man. Number 5 for me, no copycat rappers. So there was a wave of copycat rappers
Mm,
in the wake of Biggie passing, and I'd argue to this day, there's still some copy. Not maybe not necessarily the style or voice, but the persona, the Frank White. I mean, all you got to do is look at Rick Ross. I mean, hard to argue that he hasn't at least, aside from stealing somebody else's name, stolen
right.
Biggie's style and aura and whatever. Um, but yeah, I mean Rick Ross, Shine, which I always kind of felt like it was a little unfair with Shine. Like
Hmm.
I never looked at Shine like aside from sounding like him, I never like felt like Shine was trying to be Biggie. It was two
Same.
different dudes. So I always
Same.
kind of felt like that was unfair. But I mean, you had Gravy, who literally looked like the dude, you know,
I
and
forgot
sounded like
about
him, of course.
gravy.
Yeah, Gravy, man. Gravy, yeah, Sean, you have Rick
Wow.
Ross. You could. I've even had arguments with folks that like felt like Big Pun was kind of a a Puerto Rican Biggie, basically. You know what I'm
Mm,
saying? So I, and of course, this is nothing to say again. Pun. Pun is God
legend.
level as well.
Yeah,
But
legend.
I think you don't see that wave of copycat rappers, man. Maybe it's somebody else. Maybe you and even Tupac had copycat rappers. I mean, you could argue Ja Rule was a was a clone of Pac. You know what I mean? You could argue that. I mean, people have said maybe DMX was maybe a clone of Tupac. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that they are or aren't. I'm just saying that you
Mhm.
don't see that wave of copycat rappers if Biggie is obviously alive.
No doubt, man. Hey, man, they just like they said on the symphony, man. No biting allowed. You know,
Facts.
that's what one thing that we didn't allow in hip hop. You couldn't bite, and I
You,
never
you couldn't
really,
you couldn't be Future and Designer.
which they're really the same.
Facts.
Um, but you're right, man. And I totally you had me cracking up about Gravy. I totally forgot. And Gravy played Biggie
Yeah, right. He played Biggie
in the
that
Notorious
biopic.
movie.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, man, it's like you said, I'm the same way about Sean. I thought Sean could rap. I didn't. I understood why people liked, or took to Sean, but I think like I was like, y'all understand that he sounds like Biggie. I was like, but he don't rap like Biggie. It's one thing to sound like Biggie. I was like, but he don't rap like. So I never made the correlation, man. But
And even the sounding part was a reach.
it
Like
is, it
it's
is. It
similar,
sounds
but it wasn't
similar.
like it was similar, but it was like
Yeah,
people made it sound like it was just literally like
no,
remember that dude that sounded just like Jay-Z?
yeah, I
What
remember.
was I can't even remember his name.
He
If
had a
people are
video
listening,
or something like that.
yeah, like literally sounded like there was a rapper.
Hmm.
I think he was like even Angie Martinez co-signed this dude too.
Hmm.
Like that dude literally was a J like was a whole biter. Like,
Yeah,
I
and
never
it's
looked at Shine like that. So I
like
always kind of
why
felt like
why
that was an
yeah why
unfair
you want to
critique.
sound like him? You know?
Facts.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
no, I'm rolling with you on those. That
Cool.
no copycat, that's for sure.
No
What
copycats
you
at
got for
all.
6?
Number 6, Puffy doesn't become the superstar that we eventually see him become
Now
as a
you
rapper.
stepping on some toes, Manny.
I mean, listen, um, and again, I think we alluded to this obviously two numbers ago, but yeah, I don't think it was intentional. But Puffy felt like he had to take the mantle as the face of Bad Boy, for
Hmm.
better or for worse, right? Um, you know, we didn't know Mace was that guy yet. Locks was Locks, obviously. But Puffy had to be. I mean, Biggie died, man, and in one fell. So March 10th came around,
Hmm.
and Puffy was like, "Yo, I gotta keep the train moving."
Yeah.
So he stepped into that. Remember, Puffy's album was in the works already, and what the album that ended up becoming No Way Out
Hmm.
was, I think, Hell Up in Harlem or whatever. And it was a totally different album, totally different vision for it. Who knows? We for sure know that we don't have an "I'll Be Missing You."
Oh,
That
no
song does
question.
not exist in our
Doesn't
current
exist.
timeline here. We're in the MCU, man. We're in like universes collide. It's like, yo, this song does not exist, obviously. So Puffy doesn't transcend into pop
Hmm.
culture. I mean, that's not to say that Puffy isn't recognizable or he doesn't become a billionaire. Because I think Puffy had a drive and a vision and was smart in his own right. So definitely, I think what I would describe it as Puffy becomes more of a Pharrell, where he does some music, has some hits, but people think of Pharrell, they think of producer, super hip
Yes.
hop producer.
Yes.
And I think the same thing with Puffy. I think they would think of him more of like hip hop producer, guy that has some hits here and there. Can't Hold Me Down. That's a song. I think it would have been on either version of that album. Obviously, that was
Hmm.
the first single. And but I don't think he becomes Puff Daddy. Whereas at one point he was the biggest hip hop star
Yes.
in the world. You know what I mean? And I don't think that happens if Biggie's around, obviously.
1000%. You know what it is, man? He and I love the fact that you do the same thing that I do. You call him Puffy or Puff.
Yeah.
Never call I never call him
I never
Diddy.
called him Diddy. Yeah. It's Puffy, man.
because we know him as Puff. He's always gonna be Puff. According to him, he invented the remix, and it's always just been Puff. And so,
Yeah.
like, you're right. I don't think, and it's not his fault per se, but like you said, he was thrust into a position where they make the "I'll Be Missing You" record that goes bananas. That's all over MTV. It's on white radio. It's on black radio. It's everywhere.
Still to this
And
day, probably one of the biggest hip hop songs of all
ever,
time.
ever.
Yeah.
And and so, like, when it gets to that point, you don't have a choice. And then, like you said, the No Way album out was coming out already, but now it's got to be the Shiny Suit era. It's got to be this. It's got to be that, because he's riding this wave. And no, he doesn't ride this wave. And if those of you listening, if you think we're being overly dramatic about it, I'll say this: just look at what Puff did behind the mic up until the time Biggie died. It was just ad libs. That was it. He wasn't rap. I mean, he rapped on "Dolly My Baby," but he wasn't really rapping. He wasn't doing anything. He was,
Mm.
appearing in the videos. He was dancing.
Biggie
As
wrote
Suge
half those.
said.
Like, let's be real. Biggie wrote half of that. Like, come on,
Of
most of
course,
that.
of
You know
course.
what I mean? Like, so
Yeah,
what do we?
we
What do
know
we even
Puff
talk
not
about?
writing. He writes checks.
Yeah.
He already told you that. So, but yeah, I'm with you 1,000%. Puff, he would not have been what he became.
And you know the
And
crazy part about it too?
what's
Like,
that?
I feel like his artistry or whatever, him having to become quote unquote a rapper, I
Mhm.
think it took away from him as a producer. Like, I think it really like because I think Puffy to this day is still underrated as a producer, as a beat maker, as a
Okay, so quick,
song.
quick, quick question. Quick question. So, do you consider Puff to be a producer or more of an arranger? Because you know about
Good
the Hitman.
question. Yeah, yeah, true, true.
Rest in
I
peace,
mean,
Chucky
listen,
Thompson.
I mean, if you will, if you want to you want to mince words, if you want to have word salad, I guess,
Uh huh.
and word spaghetti, is he the producer in the classic term where he's
Right.
got the beat machine and he's throwing the
Right.
beat
Right.
together? No, not necessarily.
Hmm.
But I think he's not. But I think, but I still give him credit, man. I think he's definitely the arranger, and I think he may not be the architect of the beat, but he's
Hmm.
definitely the visionary of what the song is, what the song could be, sampling. He got on the train of sampling, 80s music. I mean,
Facts.
Puffy was ahead of his time because I mean, we were living in the age of 80s nostalgia, and Puffy was ahead of the curve
Yes.
just a decade after
Hell
the
yeah.
80s, like in the
Hell
90s. I mean,
yeah.
he was sampling 80s music heavy. So yeah, man, I still give Puffy his credit as a quote unquote producer. I mean, was he in there with the beat machine making beats
Right.
necessarily? Probably
No.
not.
Oh
But
hell no.
yeah, probably not. But I still give him his due as a quote unquote producer because he
Yeah.
had the vision, man. He had the vision. He Chucky Thompson Chucky Thompson didn't have the vision to do. Maybe he did. I don't want to speak for him, but
Right.
Chucky Thompson did not have the vision to do more money, more problems. He didn't. Puffy
Hmm.
had that vision. Puffy had the vision of like, yo, we gonna take this, we gonna do it in the video, and blah blah blah. That's Puffy, man.
You know what, man, and that's why I call him an arranger, because when I think of a producer, I'm
Yeah,
thinking of a Dr. Dre, a
yeah,
Timbaland, or Primo. I'm
yeah.
thinking
True.
of people like that, and I know that Puffy had the Hitmen, that was his producer team, and it's been widely rumored that like the Hitmen would have a beat together and they'd have everything there, and then Puff would come in and say, okay, well, hey, you got to take this down and put this up and flatten this out right here, and let me do this, and so
But that's
but he would get
producing too, though. That's a
Oh,
part of
it is
production.
producing. It is producing, but I think the thing that people would knock him for in that scenario would be like he would get the producer credit,
Right.
and it would say like executive produced by Puff, co-produced by the Hitman. So obviously, if I'm the executive producer, if I EP'd it,
Yeah.
then
True.
my cut of the check is going to be a whole lot bigger
Yeah.
than those who, and maybe just maybe the Hitmen were actually in there, crafting the beat and everything, and then you were downtown getting your hair cut, or you were at Junior's getting
True.
cheesecake, and you come in here and now you just touch a couple of buttons and now you're the producer. So I
That's
it's
true.
been widely documented as to how people think that it went, and some people spoke on it or whatever like that. I've never heard the hitmen, and Chucky Thompson in particular, rest in peace, speak
Yeah.
ill of Puff or anything like that. So I don't think it was as bad as people try to make it out to be. But it's just a thing of, like we talked about a little
It's
earlier,
it's
where people, don't like
it's
Puff.
one of those things to bag on Puffy about. So, and that's
Facts.
fair. I mean, again, but who like my counter to that would be is yeah, he wasn't in the studio making the beats, so him crediting himself as a producer, yeah, probably was not the best of look, and I agree with that to a point. But let's just say I'll take I'll be missing you, right?
Hmm.
And it's beat form, probably just a normal standard beat. But Puffy comes in, let's do this. Let's sample here, blah 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 blah. Da, da, da. And maybe takes "I'll be missing you" from a okay to "I'll be missing you."
Right.
Global. Hey, you may not like that, but
Facts.
that's producing as
Oh, it
well,
is. It
you
is.
know. And
It
it's like
really is. It
he
really
gets
is.
credit for that. He
And
gets credit for that.
fun fact, I
Absolutely.
read this, and I don't. I people can look it up if they will, but I read that he's gotten no royalties from that. Like, all of that money from that song goes to Sting.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
No, that's
crazy,
true. That's
and
accurate.
that's a
That's absolutely.
huge, huge
That's
song.
the only way Sting would even clear it.
Wow,
If
he's
yeah,
got 100%.
absolutely. Whew. Yeah. I mean, listen, we're not crying for Puffy. Puffy's
Right, right,
more than made up for it.
right.
He's more than made up for
Yeah,
it. Let's just put it that way.
yeah. If he
Yeah.
ain't if he ain't at a billion, he's close to it.
Yeah.
A lot closer than
Number
us.
number seven, my
Okay.
favorite one on this list.
Okay.
Because I love me a good hip hop beef.
Uh-oh.
Um, I think eventually, not even eventually, I think inevitably, Biggie with Jay-Z kind of co-signing would
Mhm.
have beef with Nas, Ghostface, Raekwon, Jeru the Damager, especially in light of kicking the door and what's beef.
Mm.
Remember, Biggie's alive,
He's alive.
album's out, kicking the door, is banging like he's talking about da, 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 yo, he's da, da, da. I mean, and listen, this was a battle that's been brewing.
Right. For a
It's been
while.
simmering for a while, right? Like Purple Tape comes out, biting niggas, like
Mhm.
Ghostface saying what he's saying. Then Nas comes out with a message, and on it was written, and da da da. You know what I mean? So this has
Lot
been
of
a
subliminals.
slow.
Lot of
I'm gonna use a
subliminals.
wrestling term here for the audience out there. If you're a wrestling fan, this is a slow burn. This is a slow
Yes.
simmering feud. The heel turn is coming, and it
I
came with
like
kicking the
it.
door, and it came,
Mhm.
and it was beef. And I think that you definitely see a beef, a back and forth between Biggie and Nas, definitely between Biggie and Raekwon and Ghostface. And
Mm.
I think it would have made for entertaining beefs. It could have made beef records. I mean, I can't imagine what the response from Ghostface and the chef would have been. And then of course Nas, and then and then you got the Nas and Mob Deep component too. So maybe Mob Deep gets into it because we all know Mob Deep was tight with Nas
Fact.
and Wu. So I mean, and then of course you got Jay-Z and everybody. I
So
think it could
there
have made
could
for very
have been
interesting theater.
there could have been a borough war. That's what you're saying.
Absolutely. I think
Okay.
so. I mean, listen, it's not even, I'm not even, I don't even think I'm speaking out of turn. I mean, there was, for all intents and purposes, there was a beef. Like it
Mhm.
was
Oh,
a
no
beef.
question. No
I mean,
question.
it was very subliminal, but at the very,
Very
but I
much
think,
so.
I think if Biggie's alive, I think it goes past subliminal shots, and I think it goes on to full on, like you get ether before ether came out.
Mm.
Like you get the
Ooh-wee.
ether, yeah, you get that, you know, it just happens. Like, and I think, I mean, everything that you see down the line with Jay-Z and Nas has roots to Biggie and Biggie and
Mhm.
Nas. So, and that falling out or misunderstanding or whatever. So
Man, I like that. I like that.
yeah, I definitely think that you
I
definitely
like
will
that.
see some back and forth shots.
I
And I think it would have made for great hip hop, man. I think it would have. I mean, I can't imagine what a Ghostface Chef rebuttal or Jeru rebuttal or whatever. So I think it would have made for great spectacle for sure.
Oh, no doubt. I agree 1,000%, man. I like what you're saying, because, like, even back then, the disses were very subliminal. It wasn't
Yeah,
overt. it
Yep.
was, like sometimes you had to listen to it, be like I might call you and say, "Yo, Manny, man, you heard Nas? You heard what
Yeah.
Nas said? You think he talking about Ghost?" And then he's like, "Nah, man, I think he talking about Big like that." And so like that's how you would be with your friends because like nobody really didn't speak each other's name. Like
Yeah.
I'll be honest, it went a minute before I realized that Kicking the Door was about Nas. I didn't
Yeah.
know,
It
you
was a
know.
sucker move back then if you was mentioning cast names. Like, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? You would be looked at as a sucker, like, oh, you it's like cloud chase. Cloud chasing was not a good thing, guys.
Never.
For the youngins in the audience. Like there was no cloud. I mean, there was cloud chasing, but I mean, like that wasn't
Not
considered
like
a good
that.
thing back
Yeah.
then. You know what I mean? So yeah, man, I think it would have just made for great hip hop, man. I mean, I think that and and then of course you got Method Man in between, and you got AZ who's running with both, with Nas, of
Mhm.
course, and it's still cool with that Brooklyn connection with Biggie and Jay. It and again, it would have made for
It would have been, yeah. Very
fascinating
good hip
music for
hop
sure.
for
Absolutely.
sure. What you
Number
got for the
eight,
next one?
eight. We really would have seen Biggie's role expand as a talent evaluator
Mm.
and nurturing MCs for the next generation. So I think one of the underrated aspects of Biggie, and I talked about it earlier, was he really had an eye for talent. Like he saw something in Little C's. He saw, even though, yeah, I know he probably was writing half of that stuff or whatever, but hey, he at least had a vision. Not everybody can just pick somebody, and even if you put in the words behind it, they got to have that it. And he saw something in Little Kim. He saw something in Little C's. You know, I think he's one of the reasons. I know the locks were discovered by Mary J. Blige. Those were like the ones that kind of put him on to Puffy's radar. But the locks have said that Biggie was very influential in their early days on Bad Boy. So even just with the locks, with Mace was another one, right? That credits Biggie for being very influential, in the early days of Bad Boy. So like Mace, the Locks, Junior Mafia, Little Kim. I mean, Jay-Z. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm not gonna say Jay-Z. He discovered Jay-Z, obviously he didn't, but him throwing his like that, Jay-Z really went to another level when like he had that Biggie endorsement. Like, yo, damn, Biggie's endorsing this dude. Like, all right,
Mhm.
okay, like this dude must be serious. So I think I would have loved to seen like obviously Biggie's alive. He's got his own label. He's away from Bad Boy. Like seeing what role he plays in nurturing, finding the next artist, kind of similar to what Kanye's done. Dre,
Mhm.
obviously, Jay-Z, like all these other artists that when they get to a certain level where they kind of become artist liaisons, where they're finding the next so
Yes.
and so. And I think Biggie would have had great success in that because Biggie had an eye for talent, man, for sure.
Oh, I agree. I agree, man. I think Biggie the businessman,
Yep.
really, really would have intrigued me because we started to see glimpses of it, like you said, in his artist development. Um, he had a clothing line called Brooklyn Mint. I actually
Yep.
had two T-shirts, man. I
Same.
I, I don't know
Yeah.
what
I had
happened
a
to those.
couple
I
shirts. Yeah,
love
I had a
those
couple shirts.
T-shirts, man. So Brooklyn Mint, we saw him dabble into acting when he appeared on Martin.
Yep.
So, he was I think starting to really come around, man. And I think I think we were just really just seeing him scratch the surface of where he was going to be. But yeah, like you said, his artist development, man, was I think that would have been interesting. Like I said, just going into his own label and being the guy calling and pushing the shots. Um, I think he would have. I think it'd have been successful. I think, and I don't think he would have needed, you
Agreed.
know, Bad Boy or anything like that to
Yeah.
succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just having finding different artists to co-sign. I mean, who knows?
Mhm.
Maybe if he's alive, we get the first glimpses of Cameron, and by definition, we get the first glimpses of Dipset. So who
Mhm.
knows, right? Like it's just the sky's the limit when it comes to Biggie as a talent evaluator, man. I think he really had an eye and an ear for that. So it would have just been interesting to see that. Number 9, New York maintains its place as hip hop's epicenter.
Uh-oh.
This might be a controversial one. No, I feel like when Biggie died, there was a power vacuum in New York. Like everybody was vying for the. I mean, they were vying for the crown when Biggie was alive. So
Mhm.
of course, when he was dead, when he passed, it was a power vacuum, and you had Nas coming for the crown. Obviously, you had Jay coming for the crown. You have, X, Ja Rule. You got, Ghostface, Raekwon, the Wu doing their thing still. Obviously, the
Mhm.
Locks, and then what they would do eventually in their own solo careers or whatever. I mean, so you just had so you just had a power vacuum. And I think having that like larger than like, because that's the thing about Biggie too. Biggie was just this larger than life figure that
Facts.
for the most part had respect from everybody. I mean, aside from his issues with so and so, whatever, he just had respect from everybody. And I wonder if Biggie was alive, do you see the proliferation of beefs in New York? Because I think that's
Mm.
kind of one of the things that really kind of helped New York fall off. Is just like, yo, it felt like every artist at some point was beefing with each other. And it was just like it just got tiring after a while. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And that's the one thing the South has always had. Is just like
$1,000.
there was a community with Southern rappers. It may not necessarily all. I'm not saying that there was no beefs in the South, but
Mhm.
like there was just a more of a understanding and a brotherhood and a camaraderie with Southern rappers that you just didn't see with New York rappers. And it's part of it just New York. You're just competitive. It's just that
Right.
mindset. But I think a lot of it was just kind of like everybody was just vying for the crown, man. I mean, even Nori had a 98 where you just big punt. Like
Yes.
everybody was vying
Yes.
for that title. And I think that maybe it might have been different if Biggie was around still, where it'd been like, yo, chill out. There's still one king here. Like chill out. Um, and even going into the 2000s when the South is starting to rise up, maybe Biggie's strong, maybe Biggie's aura is big enough to like rally everybody around him and say like, yo, you know, we're not getting down like that. You know, we're not gonna have 50 Cent, this new kid beefing with Fat Joe and Locks and da da da. I mean, maybe I'm reaching on this one, but I like to think that New York at least is able to settle itself and still maintain its prevalence as the birthplace and the epicenter of hip hop.
Mhm. No, I think you're onto something because, you know, you're right. That time, if we think about it and we keep Biggie here, that time was very critical for New York because, like you said, at that particular time, people were vying for the crown.
Mhm.
So you take 97 and you keep him here. Is it as competitive? Probably because it's New York. New York MCs are always going to be competitive, but like you said, that stretch of the back half of the 90s into the early 2000s, yeah, they were. It was so competitive that even from a distance, somebody like me who lived in the South, you could tell, like, nah, them dudes ain't get along. Wherein,
Yeah.
and then but you go look at, a video from somebody down south in Atlanta or Miami, you know, you look at a ludicrous video and Goody Mob's in it and Outkast is in it and Two Chains is in it. And it's like you see all of these cameos of these people and everybody's from different neighborhoods and stuff like that. But they're collaborating and they're working together and doing songs together. Wherein, you're not gonna see Ja Rule and 50 teaming up to do a song together. It's just not gonna happen.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, maybe he does do that. Maybe Big's presence makes New York MCs go hard at each other and they raise the level of competition.
Right.
But I know I'm with you on that. That's something I hadn't really thought about, but no, I agree with you on that one for sure.
Yeah, I really believe that, man. I don't know. I think Biggie was that big enough of a presence. And I mean, who knows, right? Maybe maybe he would have gotten in on it as well because again, it's that competitive nature. Everybody's vying for the crown as who's the best,
Hmm.
right? So, maybe who knows? Maybe we would have maybe 50 Cent comes out in 2003 and Biggie's still on top and he's like, yo, like what's this dude?
Right.
Like maybe I don't I who's to say, man, but
Hmm.
I think losing that larger than life figure in Biggie, I think it really kind of I mean it obviously created a power vacuum in
Right.
NYC. And I think you just had killers on the mic vying for the
Hmm.
crown.
Yep.
So I think that maybe having that person there is still like, yo, I'm still the top of the food chain here. Like we everybody can eat now, but there's
Facts.
only one.
There's
And
only one king.
who's to say that that wouldn't happen? My last thing, last number here, number 10. I think we really would have seen something special with Biggie's evolution as a lyricist, as a rapper, as an artist, and as a businessman.
Mm.
You alluded to it yourself a couple minutes ago. I think you really saw Biggie was just ahead of his time with just doing all the things that he was doing, delving into acting, fashion, you know, basically being a co-signer of different artists. And I think you started to see that even back then. So I think it would have just further been continued going into the new millennium. So I think seeing that, of course, but I think seeing the growth in his artistry, like that's one of the things. That's one of the beautiful things that I look at when I look at rappers like Jay-Z. You know, I know that even Eminem, like to see where they were when they started to
Right.
now, and the context of what their music is now compared to what it was back then. And I'm talking about rappers that have had 20 plus year careers. I mean, I would have loved to have seen. That's the sad part about Biggie, right? We only got 2 albums, right? We
2
only
albums,
have
that's
those
it.
2 albums. I would have loved to have seen what the follow up to Life After Death was, because even, we talked about this offline. We're like, Biggie was ahead of his time, even on Life After Death. Like Life After Death was melodic. He was singing on hooks here. It was only 2 songs here and there, but that still was ahead of his time, even for '97,
Mhm.
and it ostracized him a lot in certain circles, because a lot of people, I remember back then, like people was like, it's cool, but it's not as good as Ready to Die. And Ready to Die, he's
Right,
talking that shit, like he's
right.
singing, play a hater. What's that? Um, so I think it would have put him. I would have loved to have seen him in his evolution and in his growth from album 3, 4, 5, whatever going forward, and seen where he could have gone musically. Because I think Biggie, kind of like Jay, he always had that sensibility of like adapting with the times and always constantly reinventing himself. So I would have loved to have seen what Biggie would have done in the new millennium, especially when the South is rising. I mean, you saw it even in Life After Death. He was collaborating with Bone Thugs,
Mhm.
collaborating with Too Short. So it wasn't just New York centric for him. He was collaborating with other artists outside of New York. And I would have loved to have seen what Biggie, collaborate with Southern rappers, a Ludacris, a Ti, a Jeezy, or whatever. Like, I think it could have been the growth as an artist could have been amazing to see. And I think we would have seen something special from Biggie if he had continued.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's something I think about a lot too when I think about him and his legacy, where he would have been lyrically and musically had he survived, and then also, how he would have handled um, life as a
Hmm.
father. Um, he was going through a divorce, I think, at the time that he
Yeah.
was murdered, but just his overall evolution as to where he would be as a man. Um, because Big was he was a different type of dude. So, you just think like, man, he was just like, again, like something I said a little earlier. He was just scratching the surface.
He was
Just really, really
25.
scratching the
Like, I
surface.
think people really don't. I like
It
me and you
didn't
know
feel
this,
like
right?
that,
But I
man.
think people really like, I think forget, like, yo, this man was 20, and Pac was, I think, 24.
Yeah,
But
I
Pac was
think Bob was
25, 24. I
24.
think
Yeah,
I got it. I
they
think
were
they both
both
were 25, right
very
around.
relatively young,
Like 25. Like, this man was literally, I mean, you could make the case he was a baby still. Like,
pretty much,
still wet behind the ears. Like,
pretty much.
I mean,
And,
he
and I mean, think about it. When you're 24, 25 years old, you don't looking back on it now that you're 10 years removed from that. You know a lot now, but you're just like, man, I 10 years ago, I ain't know shit. Like you thought you did,
yeah,
but you don't, and they were navigating through both Pac and Big were navigating through a time where, they didn't have the type of stuff that we have now that kind of help us and assist us. And, it was just like, and ultimately dealing in the, the music business is shady as that can be.
yeah,
Um, One question I got for you,
yeah. What's up?
because I'm sure that people who are listening have this question because it's come up a gazillion times.
I know where you're going.
Somebody you mentioned Sean Corey Carter.
Yep.
If Big were alive, what happens with Jay Z?
I still think you have Jay-Z.
Okay,
I feel like to say that Biggie was alive, there's no Jay Z. Jay Z just fades into obscurity, or Jay Z is just a nice rapper. That's just such a disrespectful take to just the greatness of Hove. And Hove is my favorite rapper. Biggie's my
okay,
favorite rapper. They're both
okay.
tied as my favorite rappers. But like, that's just disrespecting Hove. Like, it's not even like something that's just worth arguing. Like, sure, obviously you've got that spectrum of Biggie. It's interesting to see what a world looks like when you have two behemoths like Biggie and Jay at the top of the food chain. What that looks like, right? But I think it's no different than like Jay Z, Nas, Jay Z,
Mhm.
Kanye. Obviously, for different reasons. I think you would have seen it similar to like a Jay Z and a Kanye, where Kanye's big as big, if not bigger than Jay-Z, or Jay-Z's as big, if not bigger than Kanye. And I think they both exist in parallel universes. They do different things per se. I think Jay-Z was just so talented, so smart, so driven. Like we talk about Biggie's business acumen. Like Jay-Z, I
Hmm.
mean, we've written books about Jay-Z's business
Right.
acumen. So I just think there was no stopping Jay, man. I think Jay was determined to be Jay, no matter what. And I think he would have been. I think he would have still been that guy. Maybe could we argue that he's maybe looked at in a different light? If maybe he's overshadowed, I think is probably a better question. Does Biggie
Hmm.
overshadow Jay Z? I think you can make that argument, but to say that like, oh, Biggie's around, Jay doesn't even get on, with some people would have you believe, like Jay Z was doing this thing when Biggie was alive. Like
Right.
people like Reasonable Doubt, they didn't sell as much as Ready to Die or even Nas's second album it was written, but Jay Z still to come out with to come out with a Reasonable Doubt as your first album,
Yeah.
and who's to say, you know what, in my lifetime is probably a different album too. You
This is
know,
true.
I still love In My Lifetime. I think that
I
album is
do
kind of
too.
criminally underrated. If he knocks off 3 4 songs, that is a different album completely. But
I,
maybe that's a different album. Maybe Jay
right.
Z's not in that mindset where he's trying to fill the void of Biggie, as
Hmm.
opposed to, or not even necessarily fill the void of Biggie, but like trying to be Biggie in the
Right.
bad boy element, as opposed to just be Hove. Um, Maybe that's a different album, and who knows what we get from Jay Z. So I think Sean Carter was going to be Sean Carter regardless,
Okay.
man. I really believe that.
Yeah, man. I'm with you, man. You haven't said anything on here that I disagree with. I think it that got that argument slash statement gets overstated way too much. I think
Way too
people have
much.
to understand, like, when Big passed, Jay Z had already had. It wasn't like Jay Z started dropping
Exactly.
albums after Biggie died. Reasonable Doubt came out in '96. Now, like you said, it didn't sell well, but Jay Z didn't necessarily sell a lot of records because of the void that Big left when Big wasn't here. I think you can make that case for Puff because they were in the same label. If you say, okay, well, well, Big wasn't there as competition. Well, I mean, everybody kind of, but I think that was New York kind of pushing. So Nas stepped up, Jay stepped up, Buster stepped up eventually.
Right.
Groups like that. And I think I think it was more of a collective. I don't think it was necessarily one MC in particular that, really filled that void, if you will. But I think maybe Big overshadows Jay, but I think Jay probably stays on the same trajectory that he does. He's still, because I don't think that the moves that he made ultimately were because Big wasn't here. Um,
Right.
but I also think, even in saying that, I think that it's very plausible that Big could have made the same moves or better than Jay. Um, with some of
Yeah.
the things that we talked about, with his clothing line. Jay had a clothing
Yeah.
line.
Yeah.
He had artists. Jay had artists. So
Yeah.
it's not inconceivable that they both could have been doing the same thing and relatively pushing each other to newer heights and stuff. So yeah, I had to ask you that, man, because
No, no. I mean, you can't do one of these things without talking about the elephant in the room, right?
oh,
Jay
of
Z,
course,
right?
yeah,
And I,
it's
and I
that's
think I
that's
did a good job of even avoiding it. But nah, man. I mean, honestly, the way I would compare it is like the Rolling Stones and the Beatles, right?
Mm,
Like, I feel like
facts.
they both were legendary, tremendous rock bands that literally came within months of each other,
Hmm.
and they both have their fan bases. Obviously, the Beatles get regarded probably a little bit higher historically,
Of course.
but that's not to say that like people take away from the Rolling Stones and what they did. I think they both withstood the test of time, and I think that Jay Z and
Hmm.
Biggie would have been no different. Same for Nas too. Like,
Oh,
I
no
think
question.
like Jay Z and Nas exist in the same world now. Like, so to say that Biggie and Jay couldn't have existed in the same, and like Jay just said, and recently in Neck of Risk, y'all would have got the commission, and that
Exactly.
would have even
Exactly.
who
The
who
commission was
knows
coming.
what, like who knows what
The commission. That would have been a
yeah,
group with Jay
exactly,
Z and
who,
Biggie together. And that's the
right.
thing, man. Like, people think like I've talked about this on this podcast before. Like, you know, legends in rap and music do exist, and they can coexist.
In
You
the same
know,
periods.
in the same period. There can be a Kendrick and there can be a Cole. There can be a Kendrick and there can
Perfect
be
example.
A Drake.
Yep.
You know, there could be a Jay-Z and there could be a Nas and a Biggie all at the same time. And you can have your fan bases and everybody can love who they love and support who they support, without there being any type of beef or anything like that. Um,
You don't hear people saying, "Well, Stevie Wonder would have never been in if
if Marvin Gaye
Marvin Gaye had like what? Like we had an era where it was Ray Charles, Stevie Wonder,
and
Marvin
nobody
Gaye,
cared.
Curtis Mayfield, and they were just icons, giants,
Yeah,
like musical. Prince and Michael existed in the
same time.
same time frame.
They weren't
I
going to
know
get on the
people that
record
prefer
together.
Prince more than Mike, or know
Oh,
people
of
that prefer
course.
Michael more than Prince, but I don't think anybody like denigrates one to like.
No.
I think it's just silly, man. Like, yes, Jay-Z would have still
Yes.
been Jay-Z whether Biggie was here or not, and to allude otherwise to that is foolish.
No doubt, no doubt. Before we get out of here, Manny, man, tell people where they can find you on the socials.
Man,
Tell them about your 7 different podcasts, and this man is
it's not
everywhere.
snapping, man. I do try to be the hardest working man in podcasting, man. Nah,
Yeah,
for
you
sure,
you you put
man.
in the work, that's for
I
sure.
try to, man. I'm trying. Hey, man, I'm trying to be the next Sean Carter out here, man. I'm trying to have generational wealth in these
There you
streets,
go.
man.
There you go.
Nah, man. First and foremost, man, thank you for having me on, man. You know how I
Bro,
feel about you. You know how I feel about this podcast. So anytime that I can be lucky enough to be on here with you is it's
are we going to
you
do it
know.
again?
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. But nah, man. Any given Sunday is my main show for the folks that have listened to me before. Y'all know that we're on our little summer hiatus, so we take a little break in the summertime. To just live life, enjoy, right? But we'll be back in August next month. August 21st, I believe, is the third
Okay.
Sunday in August.
Okay.
So we'll be back then with a new episode, gearing up for football season.
Yes.
So any given
Yes.
Sunday, we'll be back. And then, of course, like the title sounds, new episodes every Sunday. And podcast is available anywhere where you can find podcasts. And then I do some work for MLBBro.com covering black baseball, all things black baseball. Myself, Rob
Mm.
Parker, a host of other talented creators, men and women. We just cover all things black baseball, man, and we try to give it to y'all, straight, no chases. So check out everything that from us. I host a show with my man Mark Gray called Debatables. It's kind of a first take light where we just discuss weekly topics and we just debatables, right? So you can find
Mhm.
that on MLBBro.com. MLB Bro, just like it sounds, MLBBro.com. And then, of course, man, I'm the voice of reason on Dead End Sports. So you can catch
Yes.
me on. It's been a minute. It's been a minute. I know life
Hey,
has been
man.
crazy. So
Life has been
sometimes
life.
Tuesdays and Thursdays sometimes can get a little hectic. But I promise I will make my grand return to Dead End Sports. But in the meantime, you can catch me on Dead End Sports 365, where we do daily snippets, anywhere from 2 to 7 minutes about any random topic, and that's on YouTube as well. So Dead End Sports on YouTube. And Dead End Sports on the podcast side of things is available, like I said, on all podcast platforms. So yeah, man, that's just a brief, as brief as I can make it, synopsis of what I do.
Oh, no doubt. And here's the cool thing about any given Sunday. The title references obviously sports, but
Right.
it's not just sports. I mean, like Manny, they'll get on there and talk politics, they'll talk current
Yeah.
events, worldly events.
Yeah.
So they're not afraid to, peel back the covers and just and talk about the truth. It's that stuff is refreshing because like you can listen to it. There's not many sports shows that you're going to listen to where
Yeah.
one segment they're talking about, Joe Biden, and the next segment they're talking about, whether or not,
Yeah.
LeBron should be trying to get another person on his team
Yeah, for sure,
to the
man.
Lakers. So
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure. For sure. Yeah, nah.
it's definitely a good list. Great listen,
Shout,
actually.
shout out to my co-host Josh Rodriguez, man. Yeah,
Shout out.
he's the second half of the dynamic duo, man, for sure. So definitely wouldn't be able to do it without him. So Yeah, shout out to Josh for all things any given Sunday, man. But yeah, thank you, man. Appreciate the
No
comments.
doubt. And Manny is, I mentioned he's a Jets fan and he's a Mets fan, but he's also a
Yeah.
Lake. He is one of the few Lakers fans that I know that is very sensible about his team, because there's a
Hey
lot of
man,
Lakers fans that ain't sensible about their team. Manny, Baylor, just to name
I'm
a
on the
few. But
outs, man. I'm on the outs, bro. Like I feel like I'm an alien in
hey,
Lakerland,
man,
man.
hey,
I feel like I'm ET in
basketball
the place,
season right
bro.
around the corner, man.
Oh,
It's
I'm
right
ready.
around the corner.
I'm ready, man. Listen, I've got thoughts. I'll save them for another podcast. But yeah, I'm not your average Laker fan. Let's just put it that way. Put it
For
that way.
sure, for sure. So you guys make sure y'all check them. Give them your socials too. Where they
Yeah,
can catch
man.
you on social.
At the man. Yeah, good catch. Yeah. You can follow me on Twitter at the Manuel Brown. Just my full name, the Manuel Brown. And then that's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Manuel Brown, Snapchat, Manny Bro 15. But yeah, Instagram and Twitter, man, the Manuel Brown.
There you go. There you go. Well, you guys have been listening long enough. You know where to catch me. It's 12 Kyle across the board on the socials. This podcast, like all of my podcasts, drop every Thursday at midnight. From time to time, we drop bonus episodes on Sundays at midnight. So it's important that you do subscribe. That's going to do it for us. So for my boy, Manny Brown, I'm your boy, 12 Kyle. We'll catch you guys next time. 5,000.